Thanks so much for giving us some time. Tell us what your role is.
Okay. So my name is Geetha Pious. I'm the head of the field office for the UNMISS in Juba. So the Juba field office covers the former Central Equatoria state of the South Sudan, so which is basically also consists of the capital of the country, Juba. So as part of the head of field office, Juba is basically they are the representative of the SRSG in the state, what they represent, and they also have a very big role of the coordinating activities of the peacekeeping mission, peacekeeping components of that field office. It has police, the UN peacekeepers, and also the substantive sections. So what is mostly the substantive sections means the civil affairs, human rights, humanitarians, and also as part of the role, we are also the area security coordinator. So as part of the area security coordinator, we are also responsible for the security and safety of the all UN staffs works here. It's also not only from the Black UN is the peacekeeping, for the Blue UN, that the humanitarian community. So that's my basic role for the UN in here.
In your opinion, where does the peace process currently stand? We've seen many attempts in the past as well which have failed.
Actually, I joined in the mission in 2016, and which very much of enthusiasm. When I first arrived, it was all the works you are doing is that it is the advanced stream of the peace agreement coming and making the arrangements, and as per that peace agreement, you know, the compromised peace agreement, there was a provision of the two armies, and the two armies, and then Riek Machar coming back, but however that the army was going to the 25 kilometers out from the SSPDF, SPLA, at that time it was SPLA, was moving out. So there was a lot of issues with the communities. So my lot of role was that, you know, pick up the early warning and also the making arrangements for the community relationship with the army and that areas. And then you may all know that it is the peace process failed, and then after 6 months, in between, there is a big fighting started, and then Riek Machar went in South Africa, and then the revitalized and several attempts, and then it is and particularly in my area, it is badly affected. Earlier, in 2018 crisis, Central Equatoria was never affected. But then the fighting started, all the villages the youth are joining with the SPLA-IO, and then the people are deserting the areas. So there was a lot of destructions happened, the people are all left, particularly in the state, in the south of Juba, in EAE, Kajikeji, the people all left to the refugee camps in Uganda. So that is the time we have to start our operations in EAE, and then let me know that it is in the new peace process comes up, lot of discussions, and then arrange it. So currently the peace process is going smoothly at the ground level. So there are a lot of delays because there is a budget issues and bringing the army together on the security arrangements. Currently South Sudan is focusing on the Chapter 1 and the Chapter 2 implementation. And what we're seeing in the grassroots level is the army to army, both SPLA-IO and government are talking each other. There is a good relationship with them. There are most of the places the SPLA-IO and army took like initiatives, and they put their own grassroots arrangements if the people can have a movement. And also at the headquarters level, more in the country level, the majority of the leaders coming back, particularly the military leaders and some politicians, mostly the military leaders comes up, and the setting up of the committee, the Joint Defense Board, Joint Security Transition Arrangement, JMCC, and the Security Reforms Committee. So all these committees are set up and they started functioning. And however, there is a problems in agreeing terms of the arrangements on the number of cantonment sites and the training centers. But I know that yesterday there was some good decisions taken, and it may be going to be implemented. And if they can be able to kick off from February in that cantonment sites and the training centers, it would be a good, and that will be build a confidence in the parties.
Explain to people who don't know the situation in South Sudan how the transition is envisaged in terms of these cantonments and training centers that you are talking about.
So according to the arrangements, what we are looking at in the previous agreement, as I said, it was 2 armies. But currently the peace agreement did that, no, it would be 1 army and it would be national army. So the forces of the opposition will assemble in one area. So that is what they call cantonment sites. And from there, they will be screened and look at that your health conditions and all other conditions you are fit for the army. Then you will be recruited and taken to the training centers. And okay, the training should be normally for the armies should be much big duration, but I think that for the sake of the implementation, they may be 45 days training, and then the training centers, then they will graduated and then they will be deployed in different locations. So there should be some different training centers. So all these training centers, these current SSPDF soldiers will also go for training. So the training would be the government, and the opposition is like SPLA-IO is the major opposition, and other opposition parties. All the 3 joined together and they trained and then they deployed to other locations.
In terms of the history, and if you try to understand the history of South Sudan, it's in terms of the ethnic divide in the tribes. Do you see that unity actually on the ground in terms of a national identity emerging?
I think that's the national identity is one of the biggest problem here, because each and every tribe stands as a tribe, and they are very pride people and they pride on their tribal identities, and the different tribes have different names. And particularly in my area, the central Equatoria the tribe is basically Equatorian tribes. They are different tribes. At least in Equatoria, they say that it is 35 different tribes, but at least in my area, maybe 12, 15 tribes of Equatoria is there. But the good thing for them is much more bounded by that. One thing is that they are all farmers, agriculturists. They are allowed to cook, allowed to produce their own food and eat their own food. They are even that it is, during this crisis when we go, the community will tell that it is, we don't want to get the aid food, we will love to get the food. So they have the unity of the farming. They may have a little bit of differences on that, and they have that. And they, according to them, also they own their land. So they are also very much attached with their land. So what happened with us, because Juba became the capital, all other tribal communities are also comes here, and also the army have a lot of other communities are there. So there is a kind of a resentment in the communities to accept the other communities' values and together, because they also never lived together. So there is this gap of tribal identity communities there. So I think that's why I think that we need to develop this identity of the national South Sudan identity, or the state formation is required.
When you're talking about their land, now one of the big mandates of the UN is the protection of civilians. Now we've seen many areas where they have been protected, but do you see that moving to the next step, which is that they move back from those camps to the areas where they originally belong from? Do they feel secure enough? Do they feel they can go back and start their livelihoods again?
Okay, so this is, if you look at the POC camps, the history that it is in the 2013 conflict, the people run into the camps, particularly they thought that the other people will kill them. But then they never wanted to go back until the security is there. So if now the peace process goes on and the security is sure, then the people will go back. But the primary responsibility every time when you talk about that, they will talk that it is we want the security. So, and they have to feel the security. And they want their leaders to tell them that it is okay, now the security is there and then you can go. And until that they don't feel that it is not fully secured, they may not leave. But if it is leave, they maybe leave because they also pride with their land.
Again, you're envisaging, if everything goes well, that maybe the cantonments and there'll be movement on that by, say, February or so. March, of course, is when the renewal of the United Nations mandate also has to take place. How do you visualize that moving forward? Will there be much change from where it is presently?
Currently, the SRSG as the UN level is looking at that it is, we may need to do much more work on the building durable peace. So building durable peace, we may need to help some of the officers, particularly the accountability is a very big problem for South Sudan, to setting up of the rule of law systems and much more helping in that institutions is required. Maybe will not be, maybe protection of civilian mandate, maybe not still be here, but maybe we'll look for a little much more helping the capacity building aspects of the UN to get in the next mandate, little by little.
So little by little, that means there is still a way to go before you can move from the peacekeeping role that you have to a stabilization role.
Yes, yes. Because even though the peace process comes and the setting up the intercommunal conflict will arise more. But we're seeing that it is even that now, that it is in turn state and other states we have been getting more intercommunal conflict. So the UN still need to work on promoting social cohesion. Actually, like in our role as a head of field office role, we have civil affairs unit where we do much on that promoting social cohesion and the peaceful, like non-violent methods for the conflict resolution. We bring all the communities together and having a mediation role with them and prevent the conflict, and even if it is happened, then setting up of systems to talk each other. So, and also then we also monitor the human rights violations and bring the perpetrators to justice. So this activity should be continue as under the protection of civilian mandate. And also in the protection of civilian mandate is one thing is that preventing the conflict through the presence. So that is where the peacekeepers works. They do the patrols and by their presence to conflict. So that is not, I don't think so. It can be, the next mandate will change drastically from the protection of civilian mandate. So it will continue.
You're mentioning how big an issue accountability is, and even on the ground we've seen how people are skeptical about the fact that main players are held accountable. We've seen, like you're pointing out, perpetrators of incidents being brought to book, whether it's in Bentio through the mobile justice system there. But can powerful people, can people in power, and even if not in power, but powerful people in other groups, how does that process move forward? How does the UN visualize that process moving forward? Is South Africa one possibility that you look at in terms of reconciliation?
I think it is the Chapter 5 of the ARCS, the Revitalized Peace Agreement, is talk about that the systems and the hybrid court and the commission, truth and commissions and the transitional justice. So the part of the human rights section, they are much more involved in that. It is to promoting accountability, and currently we do a lot of public reporting on the human rights, and the Human Rights Commission also works here. So I think that that is why the national army, when we go for the trained army and organize the forces, once the training comes up, and slowly I think that there will be an slowly build up. The peace building is not an immediate things overnight, and it may take time. And this accountability, and there is a structure of the traditional accountability mechanisms was exist in the communities. Yeah, so maybe that also, but because of the conflict, that traditional mechanisms are all failed. So somehow that also to be renewed to the communities to be talk each other and the peaceful ways of means on their own accountability. But accountability, the setting up of justice system and the bringing the perpetrators under like a rule of law is very, very important for the peace building. So without accountability or justice, the peace building will not survive. But it takes time. It is not an overnight. Some violence will continue. But if South Sudanese take responsibility for their own peace, the peace process will succeed. But that is the key.
We've seen one other key in certain areas where we've traveled, where the Indian battalions have been present, whether it's in Board, we saw in Akobo as well, Malakal as well, we went to Kodok as well. In Juba as well, the Indian, it's not just the security angle of Indian presence here, the level 2 hospital, which is of course for the UN and civilians if they are allowed to. There is another hospital that is probably coming up for psychiatric treatment as well. Tell us a little bit more in your experience of how crucial Indian presence, whether security or the outreach, is.
You know, particularly the Indians are the Indian signals unit provide the complete radio communication, and the Indian hospital, the doctors, I think that everybody likes that to getting the treatment there. So yeah, the peacekeepers, they like, you know, go to like in the Boer, the Indian peacekeepers, they travel to Akobo. So Akobo is the one of the area, the first UN base going to set up in the IO area. So in the Indian peacekeepers go in that areas, and also very particularly the South Sudanese community likes Indians because, and also we are very calm people, so they much more love the Indians. So the and Indian army is also very proud, and they also well trained army, so it is a very good image the Indian army has here. And the Indian community also here, there is an Indian business people in South Sudan, and most basically helping, you know, all this. There is a lot of water problem here. So all the bore wells are actually built by the Indian companies here. So in a helping way, and the Indian community's contribution to South Sudan is great. But I feel like that we should actually to impart more of our capacity to the to South Sudan. Yeah, one maybe in the governance side, because India can offer more capacity building for the governance side, because the diverse background of the people, the community, the vast geography, so, and also maybe to the technology. One thing that I feel like that in the one problem here is the cattle keepers. And the cattle goes around in the field to grazing looking for water. But this country has 9 months or 6 months rain. But that rain completely goes. So they don't have a capacity or the technical skills to water harvesting or man-made lakes, anything. So this kinds of a small technological skills, like I always feel if they had a MS Swaminathan here, so it could have been a great. So yeah, I think there would be much more contribution India should give for, because this is the newest nation in the world, to bringing that up.
The largest democracy should be helping the youngest country in the world,
yeah,
much
and
more.
To taking their democracy. So I think that India should consider to helping South Sudan to bring the democracy. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. And all
Thank
the
you.
best.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.